So what's the difference between Arabica and Robusta? They're both types of coffee, they're both coffee beans, but there is a significant difference between them. And in fact, most of the coffee we get in the supermarkets is a blend of Robusta and Arabica. So why do they do that? What are the differences between these coffee varieties? And does it really matter which you choose for your cup? So if you ask a purist whether they should have Robusta or Arabica, most will choose Arabica. It's the more expensive coffee. It contains less caffeine. The flavour notes and flavour profiles are usually a lot more complex than Robusta. The thing about Robusta is it's cheap. It's cheap to produce. It's fairly tolerant of a wide range of growing conditions, so it's easier for the farmers to actually produce Robusta. It also contains a lot more caffeine. So if you're looking for that morning coffee that gives you a kick, Robusta is the coffee that's going to give it. So Arabica is the most popular type of coffee grown on Earth. People have estimated it to be somewhere between 59 to 80% of all coffee produced. It originated in what is now known as Ethiopia thousands of years ago. In fact, it can be traced back about 3,000 years. So that's a long period of time to perfect something. You'll often see on a coffee that you buy, a premium brand, that it's 100% Arabica. It's certainly a selling point. It's the more expensive, it's the connoisseur's choice, but it does have slightly less caffeine. Arabica coffee bushes typically grow up to 15 feet, and they only grow in the tropics of Cancer and Capricorn, either side of the equator. It's a bit of a diva. It doesn't tolerate poor soil conditions or poor water supply conditions. It needs a nice consistent amount of heat, light and water in order to grow effectively. In areas like Kenya, the rainfall is much higher, and these beans are so delicate they have to be dried after they are picked. Otherwise, the dampness will affect the flavour of the beans. In other regions, the beans are gently dried on a patio in the sun. The typical flavour notes that you get from your Arabica coffee are chocolate, fruit, specifically citrus. It's a very complex mix of flavour profiles. And because there's less caffeine, there's less bitterness, you get more of the original taste of the region emanating from each bean that you roast and extract coffee from. The trouble is, Arabica coffee is susceptible to disease. Coffee leaf rust is a big problem in some areas, and the yield you typically get from a bush is much lower than that you would get from a Robusta bush, for example. So Robusta coffee is typically around 30% of all coffees produced. So it depends very much on which estimates you go for. But most coffees that you buy that are a blend of Robusta and Arabica have about 20% Robusta and 80% Arabica. Some have unflatteringly said that Robusta coffee tastes and smells like burnt tyres. I guess that depends really how it's been roasted, but you certainly get that nice caffeine kick. If you want some wake-up juice, if you're the sort of person that drinks coffee to wake up, then Robusta is your first cup of the day. It will give you that caffeine hit that you crave. I'm personally not a big fan of 100% Robusta, and I think a lot of other people fall into that as well. So that's probably why there's not many places selling 100% Robusta coffee. Robusta is robust. It resists a lot of diseases. The yield you get from each bush is much higher, hence the lower purchase cost of Robusta beans. And they're not Goldilocks, they're not divas like Arabica is. They can tolerate a wide mix of different soil conditions or different growing conditions, different amounts of heat or light. So what's best? Well, most people will concur that in terms of flavour, complexity and the taste notes, Arabica coffee and 100% Arabica blends are the option. But if you want that kick of caffeine, you want that brute force from your cup of coffee in the morning, you certainly need a little bit of Robusta in there. So most people will go for an 80% Arabica, 20% Robusta coffee mix. And that's probably what I would go for as my morning coffee if I didn't have 100% Arabica coffee to hand to make a coffee from. But it's up to you. Try the different coffees. Try 100% Arabica, try an 80-20% mix of Arabica and Robusta, and if you can track down pure Robusta, then give it a go. You'll find a lot of these coffees that are sold as being extremely high caffeine content have an extremely high content of Robusta in them. The overall taste that you get from it very much depends on how it's been roasted and how it has been ground. So feel free to experiment with all the different options and sample as much as you can. Build up an appreciation for this awesome beverage, and don't just assume that every cup of coffee is exactly the same, because it's not. There are nuances there. Get used to actually sampling the different flavors of coffee, the different tasting notes, and form that appreciation. So you'll, after a fairly short period of time, know what you want. You'll know what you like. You know what hits the spot when it comes to coffee. So please boot the like button. That really does help us to get out there. We'd hate you to miss out on the content we've got coming up. So if you don't want to have trouble brewing, subscribe to the channel. And I've lined this video up for you that you should find really interesting when it comes to brewing coffee. Thanks for watching. See you in this next video.